sorry, I caught you off guard.
Tiffany Glanville.
Present. Here.
Karen Taylor. Karen Taylor. Julio Flores. Shonda Brody.
Here.
Aisha Clark.
Here.
Juan Hernandez. Kimberly Oliver.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for coming and spending your Tuesday evening with us. As chairman of the Hartford Board of Education, I hereby call this September 18th regular meeting to order. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present and to our TV viewers. The board, superintendent, and I are pleased that you've joined us to celebrate achievement, review information, and make policy decisions related to effective operations of Hartford Public Schools. This is a regular meeting, and all items that will be discussed or voted on this evening have been posted as required by state law. As the Hartford Board of Education, we are here to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy decisions for the district. We are not here to make management decisions or solve problems of individuals. Management is the responsibility of the superintendent. The monthly meetings of the board are open to the public. They are the time when the board conducts its business of governing the school system in a public arena. The regular meetings are not meetings with the public. Therefore, comments from the audience will be confined to the time designated for public address to the board. Decorum and courtesy are important elements in effective public meetings. Please silence your cell phones. Please silence your cell phones and communication devices and refrain from talking while others are speaking. Since it's legally mandated that these proceedings be actively recorded, I may ask for order periodically should noise begin to interfere with our recording capabilities. That speaker sounds horrible. I am pleased that you've taken the time to join us this evening. I'm very proud of the school system, and I thank you for your interest in Hartford Public Schools. And today we have two of our board members who are not here. Mr. Flores had a death in his family, so he had to return to Puerto Rico. So we're going to ask Dr. Matos to read the translation, please.
Buenas noches. El presidente de la Junta de Educación de Hartford ha llamado a orden esta reunión ordinaria de la Junta del 18 de diciembre de 2018. Damos una calidad bienvenida a todas las personas presentes y a nuestros televidentes. La Junta y la Superintendente se complacen que se han unido a nosotros para celebrar logros, revisar información y tomar decisiones relacionadas con el funcionamiento efectivo de las escuelas públicas de Hartford. Esta es una reunión ordinaria y todos los asuntos que serán discutidos o votados en esta tarde han sido notificados como lo requiere la ley estatal. Como Junta de Educación de Hartford, estamos aquí para establecer metas, escuchar los informes de la superintendente, aprobar los presupuestos, contratos y nombramientos de personal y establecer normas para el distrito. No estamos aquí para tomar decisiones administrativas o resolver problemas individuales. La administración es la responsabilidad de la superintendente. Las reuniones mensuales de la Junta están abiertas al público. Son el momento en que la Junta lleva a cabo una tarea de gobernar el sistema escolar en un espacio público. Las reuniones regulares no son reuniones con el público. Por lo tanto, los comentarios de la audiencia se limitarán al tiempo designado para el público dirigirse a la Junta. El decoro y la cortesía son elementos importantes en reuniones públicas. Por favor, silencie sus teléfonos celulares o otros aparatos de comunicación y por favor manténgase mientras otros están hablando. Ya que es mandato legal
de que los procedimientos sean grabados con presión, es posible que tengamos que pedir orden procedimiento. Si el ruido interfiere con nuestras capacidades de grabación, se va a estar notificado. Nos complace que se haya tomado el tiempo esta tarde para unirse a nosotros. Estamos muy orgullosos de este sistema escolar y les damos gracias por su interés en las escuelas públicas de Hartford.
Thank you. Who has the script to the name? Oh, that's right. Cameron's in here also. Wow. All right. So where's that script? We're gonna do 2 stats. All right. We're gonna do. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. So what we're gonna do, forgive me because I'm doing 8,000 things at once, is in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month. I'm going to turn this over. I guess we have a presentation for our students. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent, and thank you so much.
So, during Hispanic Heritage Month, which started September 15 through October 15, we recognize and we celebrate the culture of Hispanics as well as the contributions that Hispanics have made throughout our history and in our community. So this month gives us another great opportunity to celebrate the rich diversity in our community. So I ask that you join me as we celebrate the numerous cultures of the many Hispanics who have been significant contributors to both our community and the American society. And I'd like to introduce you to 2 students from Maria Sanchez School, Carlos Azuaga, 5th grade, and Iván Elise Azuaga, 4th grade. Estamos celebrando el mes de la herencia hispana y tenemos aquí con nosotros 2 estudiantes de la Escuela de María Sánchez. Tenemos a Carlos Arzuaga de 5º grado y Iván Elise Arzuaga de 4º grado. Bienvenidos, estudiantes.
Good evening.
My name is
Ivana Liz Arzuaga.
I am a 4th grader at Maria Sanchez Elementary School.
My name is Carlos Arzuaga. I am a 5th grader at Maria Sanchez Elementary School. National Hispanic Heritage Month is the period from September 15 to October 15 in the United States, when people recognize the contributions of Hispanic and Latino Americans.
Why do we have this celebration in the United States?
We celebrate the history, culture, customs, achievements, and contributions of Latinos living here. Past and present, famous Latinos in the United States include actors Andy Garcia, Anthony Quinn, and Jennifer Lopez, singer Gloria Estefan, migrant workers organizer Cesar Chavez, and Nobel Prize winner Mario Molina.
Why celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month is important for Latino families?
This is an opportunity to study the history of our ancestors and to understand the role that Latinos have played in the history of the United States.
Why it is important for you?
As a Latino, I am proud of my culture, roots, and contributions other Latinos have made to this nation. I am proud of the important roles they have played. Famous Latinos have persevered to achieve their goals, just like we at Sanchez School through the Peer Code. It inspires me to think about how, as a young boy, I too can contribute and make a difference in my own community and in my school. I am
Proud of my culture and of our success. Kikiriki, I'm in charge of me.
You can come back from the I know the superintendent wanted to take a picture of you, and she was taking pictures of your back, so I just wanted to.
Yes, proud super.
I'm gonna still with myself.
Great job. Muy bien.
Thank you so much for that. And now we're going to move on to public comments. And so, yeah. we're going to wait for the script, and Mrs. Clark is going to read that, followed by Dr. Matos.
We as the board, in collaboration with the superintendent and district leadership, are committed to cultivating a culture of excellence at all levels of HPS. We thank you for taking the time to attend tonight's board meeting. We appreciate you coming out to learn more about Hartford Public Schools and for sharing your thoughts and concerns. We have established a protocol to track and respond to concerns raised. We want you to know that we take your concerns seriously, and to that end, we have staff available for immediate follow-up if follow-up is required. After you have finished speaking, a staff member will come to you ready to take your information down. They will follow up with an update within 48 hours. As a reminder, you have 3 minutes to speak. At the 2-minute mark, Ms. Dorman will ring the bell letting you know that you have 1 minute left. At the second bell, please wrap up with your comments. Now, Dr. Matos will read it in Spanish.
Nosotros, la Junta de Educación, en colaboración con la superintendente y personal del distrito, estamos comprometidos a cultivar una cultura de excelencia en todos los niveles de las escuelas públicas de Hartford. Les agradecemos se haya tomado el tiempo para asistir a la reunión de la Junta esta noche. Les agradecemos su participación y su deseo de aprender más sobre las escuelas públicas de Hartford y también por compartir sus pensamientos y preocupaciones. Nosotros tomamos sus preocupaciones muy seriamente y hemos establecido un protocolo para el seguimiento y respuestas de inquietudes planteadas. Tenemos personal disponible para el seguimiento inmediato para los casos que los requieren. Una vez que usted haya terminado de hablar, un miembro del personal estará disponible para tomar su información. Esa persona investigará su caso y comunicará con usted dentro de 48 horas. Les recordamos que tienen 3 minutos para hablar. Cuando han pasado 2 minutos, la señorita Dorfman sonará el timbre, dejándole saber que le queda 1 minuto. Al segundo sonido, por favor, termine sus comentarios.
First Robert Smith.
Testing? Okay. Hello. Hello, there we go. I wanted to talk about a situation that happened to me in my school, which has to do with my disability, where I am dyslexic and it's hard for me to read and write. And I do try my best every day to do it, but I was in one of my, hello? Okay, there. I was in one of my classes, and the teacher, I asked the teacher, spelling's going to be graded on this work. He said yes, and then proceeded to go to the board and write things incorrectly, saying that if you cannot write, no matter what your situation, no one would take you seriously. No one will hire you. No one, not even McDonald's will hire you to flip burgers for them. And he's saying this in front of class, in front of everyone, and proceeding to write things incorrectly on the board. It made me feel embarrassed, and all I could do at that point was hide into my shirt because I didn't want anyone to see me cry. Then after class, I went to the office and would call my mom. But I just want the point of this comment that I was trying to make is why. Okay, I need to readjust myself. I was standing very awkwardly. This is the problem of being tall. Um, my thing I wanted to bring up to the board is why would like the teacher be able to say that, but not just say that, but how come investigation would not be made for that? And also, why also would the school solution to this problem be to just have me not be able to take that class? Like their immediate solution, the first solution they have to that problem was, you don't have to take that class, we'll remove that from your requirement credits, which I decided to stay in that class, but mostly just because I wanted to learn. I didn't want just because of my disability, I don't want to be taken out of a class. I want the ability to shine and learn. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Thank you. Lucy Smith?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lucy Smith, and I've just been blessed to have Robert Smith as my son. Okay? Above all, I give the school system amazing kids, non-problematic, at all times, 365 days, you get nothing but the best from me. And do you know what my son is getting? Half of nothing. He is looked down upon because he was born dyslexic. He is always being ridiculed by staff and teachers that don't know any better, who are not qualified enough to educate my son. I am tired of the petty excuses that I get from staff. Do you know I still have not been able to speak with the teacher? The principal still have not contacted me? And this is the answer he gets. Removal from the class. Now I ask this one question. If a student struggles in class, is the choice to remove the child from the class? Or is it for you to educate that child who is struggling? Someone with dyslexic has a chance almost to none to learn a second language. Are you aware of that? Maybe not, but I am. Do you know the type of son I have? My son, who struggles every day to do the basics that you and I take for granted. And yet he shines as a high academic achiever. He wants to strive in life. He wants to be successful like you and I. No less is what we're asking. Give him more. If he asks, please teach me, your answer is say, how may I teach you? Not go up on the board and ridicule a child who is trying. And I stand above all of you, above anybody, for my son. Because every day, I stand in front of him and tell him, I will stand by your side no matter what. And this year, I'm going to tell you like I told him. I'm going to take an orange, and I'm going to squeeze all the juice that comes out of it, because that's what I want from education for my son. I'm going to squeeze everything out of Hartford. You're going to give my son everything that he requires. And my son also, he is not disabled. He's only disabled if you do not provide the proper tool. Okay? That's when he becomes disabled. Now let's give him what he needs so that way he can take care of you and I in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Damaris Bolorin.
My name is Tamaris Bolorin. I'm a long-time community leader and activist. I'm also very quite involved with Hartford Parent University. Today I'm here to talk about parent engagement. And I'm gonna break it down to you. PTO. The PTO encourage interaction between families and schools and serve as source of support between teachers, staff, and the community to improve our children's educational experience. School Governance Council, which was actually formed in 2010, provides an opportunity for schools to engage with families and communities to improve students' achievement. It's a very large, actually, the meaning of what's behind School Governance Council, but I'm just giving you something, or just something very brief, so you guys can see the connection. And a parent community engagement policy is defined as parent and school staff working together to support and improve the learning, development, and health of children. Now, with the definitions that I've given you of the different associations that exist in school, many of them have existed for many years, given the case that they all interlock with one another when it comes to the meaning. Why is it that when it comes to our community schools, because it's nothing better than community schools, and when it has to do with parent engagement, today and now, we still continue to actually fall behind when it comes to parent engagement. Parents are not being given respect. Parents are not being received the way that they are supposed to. Parents are the main stakeholders in every school, and that is very important that you understand that. And so I would like to say is that we want to work with you, with each and every one of you. We would like to come to the table and find solution, because if it's a matter of going backwards, then that's what's going to take, then that's what it's going to take. But the parenting engagement and parent involvement is the most powerful tool that can exist when it comes to parents in the city of Hartford. And I have a parent here who just has something brief to share with you.
Hola, muy buenas tardes. Hola, muy buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Luz Texidor y mi parte es de estar aquí hoy día dándole gracias a esta persona que tengo junto a mí que se llama Damaris Bolorin. Gracias a ella, hoy día mi niño tiene un progreso que él ha ejercido día a día por la ayuda que ella me ha dado, y en el transcurso de todos los problemas que yo he tenido, que ha sido basado a su condición, porque es un niño de síndrome Mobius, la cual la inteligencia de él es basada a través del lenguaje de sus manos, y te escucha, pero tú tienes que hablarle de frente, y lo cual hoy día, si no fuera por ella, mi niño hoy no estuviera en una escuela que hoy día él ha hecho un progreso demasiado, y me siento tan alegre hoy día, porque sin ella hoy día no hubiera podido hacer ese adelantamiento, ese progreso, esa evolución, ese segundo step, ese segundo escalón que hoy día Yacier Ramos ha obtenido gracias a ella.
And I would like to say that this is all thanks to the opportunity that Ms. Millie Arciniega from Hartford Parent University has given me additional tools, not only that, but also space, so that I can continue to do what I know how to do best, and that is to fight for these parents and to provide them with those tools that they need to help their child succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Millie Archiniegas.
Good evening, everyone. Superintendent, board members. My name is Millie Arciniegas, and I am the Executive Director of the Hartford Parent University. I hope you are enjoying your summer, and I thank you for your dedication to the Hartford families and children. Hartford Parent University is a parent-led organization that aims to empower, mobilize, and transform the lives of parents and their children's educational experience into a positive and successful one. We are in our 7th year of operation and have served over 1,000 Hartford parents, with over 300 completing 10 classes to earn a parent leader certificate. Parents who participate in the HPU program increases their knowledge on the following: understanding their parent rights, navigating the school system, how education is changing, hence learning about student-centered learning, teaching approaches and principles, understanding and coping with child and adult trauma, assessing Power School, Parent Portal, and Naviance, understanding the individual education plan and planning and placement team process, understanding the Connecticut finance system, understanding STEM, how to improve your child's reading, dual capacity, taking part in your student success plan, community organizing, and much more. We do not do this work alone. Just to name a few we have been privileged to work with are Hartford Communities That Care, Andrew Woods, Connecticut Parent Power, Marilyn Calderon, Connecticut School Finance, Erica Haynes, university professors, retired and active teachers from the Hartford Public Schools, principals, and district personnel. Another function of ours is to help parents navigate the school system and neighborhood resources for them to advocate for their children's learning and to sustain their homes. Throughout my 18 years serving Hartford families in different capacities, I have certainly seen teachers, district personnel, students, and parents rise to the challenge of increasing student achievement. And I know if we continue to work more intentional on our goals and collaboratively together, our students will surpass the yearly goals you have set forth as a board. We have always been committed to this work and will continue to push forward for the best interests of the children. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Natalie Langlaise.
Good evening to the Board of Ed members, Superintendent Torres. I just want to acknowledge Shanta. Since you've been there, I never publicly congratulated you on your position. We've worked together in the past. Congratulations, Aisha. I am happy to be here this evening because it's a new school year and parents are excited to continue the collaborative work of high quality education, student safety, the district model of excellence, parental engagement, community partnerships, and best usage of funding. I want to first say that my son's transition from MLK to Rawson is going very well. Never mind that he already tried to test his teacher, Miss Salmon Black, but she is awesome. I don't know what her strategy is, but in the first 3 weeks of school, Justin has learned his 4th, 5th, and 6th times tables and is now on his 7th. I've been struggling with that for an entire year. So what I'm saying is that teachers who care truly can make a difference. And I am reassured that the high quality education I want for my child can be achievable through this board. I am always optimistic and I do believe in you. I also want to say that over the summer, I attended the HPU facilitators training. I am a graduated HPU facilitator and I'm ready to be put to work. The area of training which stood out to me was on the Every Student Succeeds Act and particularly parental engagement. I think if you, the board, are really sincere about this, you would make every effort possible to have parents trained so that they can really hold you accountable as you request of us. I will not hesitate to say that schools are still struggling as far as SGCs and PTOs are concerned. And I think that the 1% allotted for parental engagement is insufficient to meet the needs, which are so vast and wide within our community. Parents need to be able to ask the questions, like, does my school have a safe school climate committee? Does data show a reduction in abuse and bullying since the OCA report? Why are our kids still sent to the Science Center 4, 5, 6 times a year when parents are not being trained on curriculum, assessment, how to read the school scores, how to handle bullying and stuff like that. We definitely have to make a more effective usage of agencies like HBU who are empowering us and teaching us how to politely and effectively engage you all. Other areas of concern quickly, Madam Superintendent, our community advisory leadership meetings, I would like to see that happening. I'm receiving questions from the community about Weaver. What's up with Weaver? What's about the MLK renovations? Is it moving along within the set timelines? What does the timeline look like? Why are minorities still being denied spots at magnet schools because of a racial quota? Questions like, do parents know that Title I schools must notify them in a timely manner if teachers assigned are not qualified, highly qualified teachers, are what we need so that we can grow? Finally, I want to know, where's the dialogue about the community schools? I am loaded with ideas, and I would love to collaborate with you. On behalf of HBU, I just want to say we are here to work with you, and we look forward to having a great school year. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Denise Tillman.
Can everybody hear me? It's not working properly. Good evening, Superintendent, board members, and all the people in the audience, because we all count. I'm here to talk about SSP, Student Success Plan. To me, an SSP is similar to an IEP. You're doing it in the 6th grade, and I wish you can reiterate it in the pre-K. Since pre-K students are actually being pre-screened at this particular time, it's irrelevant that you do it at that time. The reason why I'm elaborating on it is because I was at the PTO in 2007. I'm ecstatic that you guys are actually having not as much family input as we used to have when I was a PTO president, and wish you can embark on that endeavor. It's really heartbreaking to me that they're not actually here, but HPU, because the thanks God to Millie, I told her I will embark on this endeavor one more time and one more time only. I'm sad to see that our students in the past, when I was here, were at above, if not above reading level, and are now below reading level. I'll get back to the SSP plan. An SSP is, for those that know what IEP is, similar. If you can document that actual SSP, Student Success Plan, at an early stage and actually consolidate all your information and execute it in a manner which is supposed to be, you'll be much more successful. I am semi-appalled, but not really that bad, that you're starting in the 6th grade. If in the past they talked about students lose their reading level at 3rd grade, that is very, very scary. I can't wait to the 6th grade when you're already talking about documentation you had in the previous, prior to your predecessors. Again, preschool is the foundation of all of us. You guys, even though psychiatrists say that individual students' mentality is not there, then I'll say, then why screen? Because I'm being a parent, then to me you're wasting my tax money. But again, through HPU, because Millie has been, me and her have been together for almost, I think, 11, if not 12 years, I have faith in everyone. I am a very optimistic person. I have worked on a lot of different things in my life. I've sat on a DRS. I've also sat on a medical home advisory call, and I also sit on a lot of different boards that I do free of time to make sure that each and every individual in the state of Connecticut gets what they need, and it's applicable to what that individual's learning expertise is. Again, that individual. We are all experts and professionals in everything we do, but if we do not focus on the individual themselves that has to execute their expertise and education from the time, I say, conception to the time of college and even beyond, as we all work on our masters and our doctors, then we're not doing anything profitable. Each individual learns something new every day. I feel that Hartford Public University, because you guys have let these individuals educate us parents, and you believe in that you guys should work more cohesively together and give each other more accessibility to one another when it comes to communication. I also just recently went to Screening to Success, or Call to Action. That's when all states of the state of Connecticut, all individual providers sat down and counseled and talked about what they can do and where do we go from here. But again, I'll say I'm only going to focus on Hartford right at this particular time. I believe in you. I think you guys will listen to HPU. I think you believe in the parents, and I think you guys will do the best of your ability to make sure we all succeed. I truly, truly believe in that. Again, I'll say HBU has been a stepping stone since 2007 for me when I was a PTO.
You're over your time.
Oh,
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't hear it. You should have reminded me. About to hit me.
I didn't want to interrupt.
That's all right, but you got to interrupt. You got to do it. It's your job.
Thank you. Kelly Santana.
Good evening. Superintendent, board members, hope everybody enjoyed their summer. My name is Kelly Santana, and I'm a grandparent of a student at Parkville Elementary School. I am also a parent leader and a graduate of the Hartford Parent University and participate in all of the parent community events to create district model of excellence and strategic plan to attend equity for all students. I am very grateful for HBU because I know I could recognize when things, oh, excuse me, sorry, let me start that over. I am very grateful for HBU because of them, now I can recognize when things are working well in our district schools and when things are not going in the right direction. We currently have a new principal at Parkville this year who has put procedures in place to take the school in a great direction that I fully support. That being said, my first week of school did not go so well due to lack of communication to the parents when it comes to the following. Upon dropping off children at the school, parents can no longer enter the school building with their children. And also there was a new reading log in place of homework that I guess the new reading log is the homework, which I don't understand. Like, that's the only homework my grandsons get in is a reading log. So if you have lazy parents at home or parents that can't even read, those kids that have a reading log for homework aren't doing no homework. And when I discussed this with the principal, she said she was going to make some adjustments to that and leave it up to the teachers. But I think she's receiving some pushback at the school because my grandson still hasn't come home with any additional homework other than the reading log. And when I mentioned it to his teacher, she kind of gave me the impression she wasn't going to give us anything other than the reading log. Pretty much. She doesn't have time for homework. If this would have been communicated to the parents, I would not have had difficult time adjusting my grandson to the new procedures and stop JR. If you guys would have daycare, I wouldn't be having this problem. Sorry, just a suggestion. If this would have been communicated to the parents, I would not have difficult time adjusting my grandson to the new procedures and guidelines. I was able to speak to their principal about these issues, and I'm in a better place. The following are some recommendations I have for the superintendent to consider prior to the first day of school for all schools to implement. Have all principals send a letter to the parents communicating new procedures and guidelines to parents and welcome them to the new school. If we know about the new procedures and guidelines, school and classrooms, we could better support our children's learning. Have all security guards properly trained to speak to our parents and students with respect. There has been issues where security guards do not speak properly to the parents, and one parent was literally blocked at the door by a security guard putting his hand on her chest at Parkville. Why blocking them? Ensure the security guards or the person sit at the main entrance to look for IDs of parents and visitors when they're entering the building. There should never be a case where someone is buzzed into the school and there's no security guard or person to greet them properly and check their ID. Also, there should be information sent out to the parents right away about dangerous drug activity or other incidents happening around our school grounds, such as at my grandson's school. There are individuals sleeping on school grounds due to being under the influence of drugs and discarding drug paraphernalia on school grounds as well. We should have police monitoring the area more often to stop this from continuing. This was already recommended from the principal during our NRZ meeting to the community officer. We hope you could also make a phone call to the police to support this and along with the principal, supporting the principal along with keeping our children safe. Basically, she found a woman unconscious on the bench in the park before school opened, and she doesn't even know to this day, she doesn't even know if that was a parent actually dropping a kid off at school or if she was just passed out on the bench. But they're finding people sleeping on the park, and they're finding drug paraphernalia, needles, empty baggies on the long side of the back of the school. And in the front of the school, in front of the library and the senior citizen center, there's individuals drinking and stuff like that when school's being released at 3:30 in the afternoon. Now, we said something because I'm on the NRZ board of directors, and the principal did bring this up to the community police officer, but in all honesty, I don't want to say he gave us the impression that he didn't care, but he really did give us the impression that they don't have additional time to support their school. So we need to get on that, because it's dangerous for the teachers to go out there and they could wake somebody up off the bench or could be under an influence and get hurt, let alone they pass out in the middle of the afternoon and nobody sees them, and then our kids go out to play in the playground and then they're there. So we don't know what's going on with that, but that was not like that last year. It was not like that last year at the school, so it's just become a problem, and I'm asking for support from the board to get on the police department about giving us some more police activity in the area during the time the kids are dropped off in the morning and picked up in the afternoon, to eliminate that. Other than that, I appreciate your time. Everybody have a blessed day. And again, I'd like to say I support the superintendent with your Equity for All plan, and I also like my new principal, and I'm on board with whatever she got going on. Everybody have a blessed day.
Thank you. Michael Downs.
Good evening, board members. My name is Michael Downs, 74 Rosemont Street in Hartford. I was at the meeting last Tuesday at Parkville. Quite interesting, dealing with engagement and guidance of students, and developing subjects and programs that would be more engaging to students. We used to have those programs years ago until the state came in and ripped them out under the guise of saving money. Educating students costs money. And so we've got to bring in guidance counselors who were eliminated, social workers that were eliminated, special ed teachers that were eliminated. Some have been brought back, but not enough. More were eliminated than were brought back. And the same with some of the arts and the physical education and things like that. But we don't have guidance counselors. These students need guidance. The teachers are a good source of guidance, but not all teachers, especially young teachers, aren't that good at guidance or directing students. It takes experience, mainly life's experience, to be able to guide students in the right way. Students need engaging subject matter, drafting, printing, woods, metals, plastics, machines, introductory machines, culinary work, that type of thing, culinary subjects, stuff that we sometimes bring in and we take away, bring in, take away, just for the sake of saving money. It's the state's fault. They were the ones that came in and ripped the subjects out. And so the state should be bringing them back, and they should give us more money, and they have the money. This state oversight board is a bunch of nonsense. It just saves the state money so they don't have to pay us a back pilot. So we should have filed for bankruptcy, and then we'd have a federal judge oversee the whole thing. But I'd like to say that in the end, I suppose it all begins at the beginning. We need system-wide preschool. We don't need preschool at this school or this school, and this school doesn't have preschool. We need preschool available to every student in the city, free preschool. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. Moving right along is the report of the chair. So what I'm going to do is divide my time I'll give you a small brief update, and then I'm going to yield to Ms. Oliver, who will give you an update on the Hartford Building Committee. as a result, since we both sit on that committee. And then we'll go into the superintendent's report. So I just want one feel-good thing, which I thought was pretty cool. The Black Panther movie is being played at the Yargoat Stadium on the 25th, so bring your kids. I thought that was pretty good. I attended a education committee meeting at City Hall last Thursday, where I was informed by the city treasurer that there are two accounts, 403B and 457B, for non-union employees were established illegally on the 12/23/09. So I have asked the superintendent to look into that and investigate that. The city is trying to, or attempting to consolidate these two accounts with the other pension accounts under the purview of the treasurer. And so I believe we should have clarification on the action of that board. So I've asked the superintendent to look into that. And I just wanted to give that general report. And last thing is, second to the last thing, in November, some board members, along with the superintendent, will do a joint panel discussion on board superintendent governance, which I think is awesome and I'm proud of. And that will be presented to 168 Board of Educations around the state. And so that leads me to my last thing, which is I just discovered the term super board, and that was thrown at me in relation to our board, meaning that we have the potential to become a super board, and I think that we should set that goal as a board to be one of the highest functioning, if not the highest functioning board in the state. So I'm proud of that, and so that's something that we're gonna strive for. And I just want to acknowledge the parents. We do take parent engagement very seriously, and we are going to try to figure out how to be more effective and more intentional on how we're engaging our parents and how we're building capacity. So I just want to yield to Ms. Oliver.
Thank you, Chairman. So on the school building committee, I'm just going to do a couple of quick highlights. The first one is in regards to Weaver High School. Weaver is actually on track and officially has moved into phase 3, which is a big deal, so we're excited about that. Want to acknowledge the weather has not been cooperating, as many of you guys could have guessed. Basically, what that means is the weather has been so wet as of late that the materials that need to dry so that they can move on to the next steps. It has been difficult. Many of those materials need to dry for 48 hours, etc. The construction manager is working with the teams to do what they call a recovery schedule as a result of that, to make sure we are still on time, and so we open on time. So at this point, we are still on track with Weaver, which is great news. Martin Luther King, they did look at the cost estimates. There were some things that did come in high. What they've been able to do is take a look at some of the components of the budget, some that do not impact the program directly. What they will be doing is sharing with each one of the committee members the list. It does not change the visual presentation, we've been told, that many of you have seen regarding MLK. So for example, one example that was used was the flooring material may now be a different flooring material, that type of thing. But we will have that list to be shared with us. If needed, we may have to do a special meeting, but it is expected that none of this will impact programming, and again, should not significantly impact the design that many of you have already seen and participated in that process. And then finally, central office move to Buckley High School. We approved the move for the construction documents, and that is a move that is being managed in-house by Hartford Department of Public Works, I believe. And they are working with that. Those construction documents obviously will be critical the majority of the FTEs will be able, the full-time employees will be able to move as part of that Buckley move. And I believe that is scheduled for completion by 2020. So that is it, the end of my report.
Thank you so much. Madam Superintendent.
Good evening, and thank you, Chairman Stallings. I do want to acknowledge that you have given me some of your minutes on your report, so my report might be a little longer. Lots to report. I'll start with the fact that attendance matters here in Hartford Public Schools. September is Attendance Awareness Month, and every day of the year, each of us can help ensure that all of our students are in the classrooms every day, ready to learn. Our district, in partnership with United Way, the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, Hartford Foundation for Public Giving, Hartford Public Library, the City of Hartford, and Attendance Works is promoting attendance awareness. And so we ask that our parents, certainly our schools, our city agencies, our community nonprofit, our business partners, our faith leaders, everyone continue to deliver the message to our students and our families that every single day we need our students in school. Athletics, this fall, the Hartford Middle School Athletic League will offer interscholastic athletics to students in grades 6 through 8. It is designed to promote wellness, sportsmanship, and foster, of course, interscholastic competition. So we know that athletics helps improve academic focus, attendance, athletic skills, school culture and climate. It's fun, and it will give some team in our city some bragging rights in terms of being the best in the district. And so this fall, we're starting small. We'll offer co-ed soccer, girls volleyball, and co-ed cross country. The Office of Outreach, Family Engagement, and Community Partnerships, I want to just share 2 highlights. We all know that school has been in session for several weeks now, and some of our students were unable to start school with their uniforms. However, we are very intentional. We did not turn anyone away. And so we were fortunate that we had Calling All Brothers and the Connecticut Divine Nine, which is a collective of 9 fraternities and sororities, and the Christian Activities Council. They came together and collected over 200 polo shirts for our students. And so we want to extend gratitude. And also with regard to professional learning, we want to be intentional about every adult in our school district growing in their practice. And so the Office of Outreach and Family Engagement and Community Partnerships kicked off the Family Provider Institute series on September 5th. And so FRAs, our family resource aides, our school family and support providers, and our family resource center directors met to discuss their role in modeling our core beliefs in our district model of excellence. And they also discussed their goals for family work in our schools. And the group was going to convene on a monthly basis for additional professional learning. A data highlight that I want to make, last Friday we were part of a press conference with the Commissioner of Education and Governor Malloy. And during last school year, Hartford Public Schools in general throughout the district, there were 564 advanced placement courses that were taken by our students with an average pass rate of 95.7%. And looking back to 2015, this is an increase in 130 students taking AP courses and a 4.3 increase overall for the district. Also at Hartford Magnet Trinity College Academy provided the highest number of AP course offerings last year with an increase of 107 course offerings. Also wanted to report that in addition to our AP opportunities, we do offer 415 early college experiences, what we call dual enrollment, for our students last year. And so we're eager to continue to build opportunities for our students to have access. Update around our central registration pilot process. The Office of Operations, in an effort to try to centralize the process of registration for families, identifying efficiencies and effectiveness, looks to provide a consistent and smooth process for our families through the use of an online platform where families can go on, complete registration of the forms online, upload certain documents, and it also allows the school to track the progress of the registration for the families. So this summer, the first pilot of schools was launched. There were 6 schools: Canelli, Elams, Rawson, San, Sanchez, and Wish. And if you think through those schools, there was an intentionality there, given that these schools were selected because they were receiving the students from Batchelder and the Simpson-Waverly closures. And so, they were busy this summer with the pilot, with over 800 students registering in those 6 pilot schools. The Office of Student Supports, also around this theme and the intentionality of making sure that all of our adults continue to learn and grow, the Office of Student Supports provided 7 differentiated special education professional learning opportunities in the month of September. And so they're classroom teachers, special education teachers, resource teachers, paraeducators, social workers, psychologists, engaged in professional learning and topics around individualized education plans, goal setting, setting expectations around access, participation, and progress of students with disabilities, and then the transition for high school students with disabilities. Also work that's out of this office that is very important for us as we continue our work to improve our chronic absenteeism. The office is leading the district attendance remediation team to support our goal to decrease our chronic absenteeism. And in the month of September, they were very specific in their foci, looking at data and addressing specific actions around the absences that were due to transportation challenges, reports of the schools calling families with students that are at risk, reports of teachers around phone numbers, for example. When teachers called parents during leading up to the first day of school, we found that there were some numbers that were not good contact numbers for us. Incomplete transfers of students, no-show of students, and so there were a lot of different things that were uncovered during this month in September, and the DART team will continue to try to identify those barriers for our students and for our families. On the teaching and learning side, this week marks the kickoff of our universal screener, the Fountas and Pinnell. It's the benchmark assessment, and this is individually administered to assess our students' instructional and independent reading levels. We know that we have a focus, a narrower focus this year, both on guided reading and close reading. And so at the earlier grades, we want to learn about our students' reading levels, as well as reading behaviors and comprehension. And then we want our teachers to use that information and that data to plan their instruction. This is going to be administered to all of our K through 5th grade students. They were going to be scored by the staff at each school, and then the scores are going to be entered into the Performance Matters so that at the data team meetings coming up in October, the team of teachers can unpack, if you will, kind of dig through the data and inform their practice. On the upper grades, the Reading Interim Assessment 1 window also opens. Students in grades 6, 7 in English 1 and English 2 will also complete 4 interim reading assessments this year. These are aligned to our ELA curriculum, and the students are going to also participate through the Performance Matters online assessment. This is going to take place by September 28th, and again, the results are going to be immediately available in our Performance Matters platform. Lastly, the other group that engaged in our professional learning, we had principals and assistant principals last week engage in professional learning around sharing ways that we can keep the core values that we have alive in our schools, content learning experiences around guided reading and close reading so that they can support the major initiatives, and then reviewing the teacher evaluation and the administrator evaluation. We heard feedback from the assistant principals last year around the fact that they felt that they wanted to have access to the learning that we were providing for our principals. And so this year, we wanted to provide the opportunity and extend that to our assistant principals as well. 2 events that are coming up. There is the Travelers is hosting a reception to allow our community to meet myself and our members of my cabinet. This is on Thursday, September 20th, 4:30 to 6 at the Travelers Plaza. And I just wanted to thank Travelers for not only their continuous support, but their belief in Hartford Public Schools, and of course for hosting the event so that we can continue to solidify strong partnerships on behalf of our students. Lastly, on Wednesday, September 26th, I will be attending a University of St. Joseph's Women's Leadership Conference featuring an interactive panel of women leaders, and the center of the discussion will be around grit and persistence in leadership and how that connects to education from pre-K all the way to college. So I invite anyone that's interested in participating. Chairman Stallings, that concludes my report.
Okay, that's doing great. And to bring my mother to that one. Okay, so we're going to go on to, let me see. I am going to skip Finance and Audit Committee report unless anyone else has. Actually, no, I'll do say this. This coming fall, we're going to be doing some work with ERS, so we're going to start the budget process a little early. So we're going to have some public engagement events where we can discuss the budget, budget criteria, so forth and so on. So we're looking forward to that. And as you know, or may not know, the Finance Committee is the committee of the whole. So that's every board member who is a member of the Finance Committee. So hopefully we will have a robust discussion this fall about the budget. And we may even have some co-presenting opportunities with the board, presenting with central office staff. So we want to sort of raise the bar. And so I'm going to finish that and move on to 3.4, which is the Policy Committee report. Mrs. Brody.
I am reading this for our board member, Karen Taylor. The Policy Committee introduced a process that would streamline the policy adoption process, increase transparency, and provide all board members a venue in which to provide input. Dr. Vasquez Matos introduced a policy cycle framework. This would take on 3 distinct lanes. Legislative updates, reviewing existing policy and making sure it is up to date, and new policies that are proposed. In July, once the legislative update has been received, departments will receive policies that pertain to their area and assign a policy committee meeting throughout the year. They will create work groups and redline policies based on legislative updates and internal processes. These will then be reviewed by the policy committee with the staff present to answer any questions. Once approved, the policy will then be moved for a first read at a board workshop. At this workshop, all board members will have the opportunity to review and provide input and ask questions of staff, as they will be present as well. At this point, it will be either moved for a second reading and adoption at the next regular board meeting, or go back to policy committee for further review. Sorry. The cycle will repeat itself twice a year, July through December, where the December workshop will be dedicated to the policy review, the first reading, and then again in January to May, where again the May workshop will be dedicated to the policy review. At these workshop meetings, we will also have a public portion where stakeholders are able to attend and give feedback as well. The goal is to eventually only have to update our policies with any legislative updates. And that was read for our policy chair, board member Karen Taylor.
Thank you so much. That's actually exciting because that's a new way of doing things. So I appreciate all the work the policy committee has done with that, Ms. Brody, Ms. Glanville, Ms. Taylor. So the next report we'll hear from is School Choice and Facilities. Mrs. Glanville.
Thank you. Yep, School Choice and Facilities Committee met on Monday, September 10th. We had several items on the agenda and also had some discussion about sort of framing the work for the whole year and items that we need to sort of work on over several months, including a transportation policy that is revised and consistent with the district model of excellence. We had a discussion about outside organizations using space in our facilities and how all of those requests for space and agreements for organizations to be using space need to be memorialized through memorandum of understanding agreements. And the specific agreement the specific request that was that was before the committee, even though it wasn't before a decision of the committee, but the committee was being apprised of, was Hartford Parent University's request to use space in one of our buildings. And at the time of the committee meeting, the proposal was to have them have classrooms in the New Visions school, which is actually the Fox building. We also had further discussion about New Visions, which has been a challenge over the last year to figure out where that program will be housed. It is agreed by all the parties that New Visions really ultimately needs to have their own building and facilities. That cannot be done this year. So for this year, and probably until the district model of excellence is fully implemented and through 2020, they have been housed in the Fox building with Achievement First in there as well, pending an ultimate permanent location for them. We also had some discussion about, or were apprised of our buildings that have no further educational use at the moment, including Clark and Simpson Waverly. There was discussed with the committee, and the committee was apprised that Simpson Waverly is currently being used to help with the movement of various furniture and fixtures through various schools as the district model of excellence becomes fully implemented. That it is, I guess, currently under consideration to continue to use the facility of Simpson Waverly to help stage that movement. We were also apprised of Clark. The Clark building is still in the district's ledger. I guess we're still paying a minimal operational expenses there. It's still in litigation, and there's been discussions about ultimately having the building being demolished, but again, no steps have been taken on that, pending litigation that is still ongoing. We discussed the central office move, which Ms. Oliver also mentioned in her school building committee report, that those plans are underway still to move to Buckley and on time. And I think Ms. Oliver said it was 2020, and more specifically, we were the central office lease at 960 Main ends as of July 2020. So that move is on schedule to Buckley for central office for that timeline of July 2020 to be out of that lease in time. And then lastly, we had Pastor Ajay Johnson was invited to the committee meeting, and we heard a compelling presentation from him about some of the community organizing work with various parents that he's been doing around since we've had the school closures in the Northeast, how far children are having to walk to school, and what the landscape of that walk looks like, and concerns about kids having to walk through some dangerous thoroughfares, and just sort of a longer term input into like a longer term discussion over the course of the coming months as to how that kind of anecdotal, in addition to some anecdotal input, and then also data that we really should be looking at around transportation and walking to really help inform an equitable and aligned transportation policy. That concludes my report.
Thank you so much. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to ask the superintendent or someone through operations and the superintendent to check on why we still are in possession of Clark Street School Building, and if we can get that off of our balance sheet immediately, that would be advantageous for us. Okay, and teaching and learning is the chair's not here, so we're not going to have a report from teaching and learning. So I'll just take a small point of personal privilege, and I just want to comment and acknowledge that our board member, Mrs. Aisha Clark, has not been here because she's been busy working on a congressional campaign supporting the former National Teacher of the Year. And I don't know if you want to say a small tidbit about that work. If not, those eyes are piercing me. So I'm going to move on to the student report.
Hello, everyone. The Student Senate had their first meeting of the year on September 6th. At this meeting, we welcomed new and old faces to the table. During this meeting, we met with two important figures, the superintendent and the director of food services. Dr. Torres Rodriguez introduced the district model of excellence to us, and she also talked to us about her goals for the school year, and she plans to go more in depth with us at our next meeting. Ms. Burke came and gave us insight of what she does and how we can help. At our next meeting, we will meet with the food staff and work with them through our schools. So each of us will meet with the head food staff at our school and work one-on-one with them and convey our student concerns at our school with them. And this helps us make sure that we're part of the process and also that our peers' voices are being heard. The Student Senate also plans to have a survey that will go out to high school students to see what changes they would like to see in their menus. On another note, last night I attended the Love the Neighborhood event with another Student Senate member, Jasmine Law. We had like the best time ever. It was absolutely amazing. We didn't think that we were going to have that much fun. But everyone was so nice and they were so welcoming and they greeted us with smiles. And Jasmine and I were able to meet with other adults and students who shared the same concept of community. We had in-depth conversations with complete strangers about what it means to love thy neighbor. We learned that we as a society cannot judge one another based on the color of their skin, the clothing they are wearing, the religion they follow, how much money they have, or the person they choose to love. Love thy neighbor means to accept the person as they are and to welcome them into the community. All of us can learn from this event and apply it to our community today, knowing that we as a school community must teach students and kids to learn with diversity. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay, so we do have, excellent. So we will have a report from the Teaching and Learning Committee. Mrs. Clark is going to read that, but before she does, I just want to defer back to our student board member because you forgot to mention something.
Oh, about the truck, about the bus.
On September 27th, Thursday from 4 to 5, I'm going to have a grand opening for my bus, Stop for Art. Stop for Art is a school bus that was transformed into a crafting bus that will go around to after-school programs like elementary schools, the Boys and Girls Club, and I'm also talking to someone in the recreation program. And I'm going to allow students to showcase their artistic ability on this bus. I just finished completing the inside of the bus, and now I'm ready to show it to everyone. So if you guys are welcome to come, it's in East Hartford. It's 52 Oakland Ave, and it's from 4 to 5. Thank you.
Thank you. I had it backed up for you, just in case. Okay, Mrs. Clark.
Okay, I'll read this on behalf of Juan Hernandez. And so it states, the major action was close and guided reading. And it states, HBS is just shy of our 2018 target, showing preliminary results of at 3.8%. Rebound this year for grades 3 and smarter balance. Research is clear that grade 3 is a pivotal year of mastering literacy and consequently a gateway skill to further learning and future life success. Reading is how we gain new knowledge, and third grade is the year when most students transition from learning to read to reading to learn. In the fourth grade, students begin taking the new information and vocabulary through the wider range of texts that they read. Struggling readers who have made this transition may play catch up for their peers and are 4 times more likely to drop out of high school. They also tend to be disproportionately poor students and students of color. Our state uses the Smarter Balance assessment to monitor the degree to which our students are mastering grade level standards, and it serves as a benchmark of how students are progressing toward college and career readiness and literacy. The goal is for students to achieve a level 3 on this test. 4 claims areas of performance measured. The first is reading, which is read closely and analytically to comprehend a range of increasing complex literacy, literally and informational texts. Second is writing, produce effective and well-grounded writing for a range of purpose and audiences. 3, listening. Students can employ effective speaking, listening skills for a range of purposes and audiences. 4, research. Students can engage in research, inquiry to investigate topics and to analyze and investigate and present information. Third grade literacy current strategic actions are implementation of a common standards-based HPS literacy curriculum in all schools, implementation of an explicit foundational skills program, ensure fidelity of a balanced literacy schedule inclusive of guided reading in all schools, continue collaboration network model through eLead, development of data-driven teaching and learning cycle for pre-K to 5th literacy through common assessments, AMS, and alignment of grading practices through SBG. Some of the things to know are grade 3 readings has struggled historically. Since then, we have shifted to the Connecticut core standards, or better known as the Common Core state standards, which was required to shift. Since then, we have, 2013 to 2014, HBS adopted the expeditionary curriculum for grades 3 through 5. Implementation was not monitored and professional learning was scattered in 2016 to 2017. District collected data on schools implementing the curricular and discovered that implementation was inconsistent and a significant group of schools were not implementing at all. Currently, district literacy team has been working to ensure all students are implementing the curriculum as well as adjusting the curriculum to meet the needs of the diverse learners at HPS. 2014 through 2015, we wrote a new K through 2nd grade curriculum with 6 pilot schools with a strategic focus on balanced literacy block. Schools did not have a balanced approach and were teaching read aloud for an extended period of time without the inclusion of shared reading. Foundational skills and or small group guided reading instructions were also implemented. In 2017 through 2018 is the first year that all 28 elementary schools are implementing the HBS curriculum for K through 2nd grade. And additionally, lastly, network model of collaboration and professional learning is being implemented. Some of the things that the Teaching and Learning Committee is prepared to discuss is the district is doing everything that it can to ensure that the curriculum is being delivered in all 28 elementary schools, and that they're doing the HBS curriculum from K through 12. Discussion is being had with parents and families and making sure that they understand, and also work will be done with Dr. Negron and also working with Ms. Nashette Blackberg. And that concludes the report for Teaching and Learning.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Clark. Okay, so before I go on to the business agenda, I just want to reiterate or just comment again. We had a workshop that was based on data. I believe it was a good workshop. It was an honest conversation. We sort of aired some of our dirty laundry, but what we did was we started the dialogue so that we can sort of understand the heavy lift and the burdens that the central office staff and teachers are facing. And so I think that it gave the superintendent and her staff gave a very solid perspective on the struggles and where we are and where we need to go. So I just want to acknowledge that and say thank you, because it was very lengthy, and we look forward to more data conversations. And then I just wanted to comment on the agenda. As you notice, as you can see, we have one item on the business agenda, and where we're going to try to have manageable agenda so we can have more conversation, more dialogue, and get you out of here on time. So with that said, item 4.1, contract approval, Joe Bremer, consultant. Give me 2 seconds. Joe Bremer Consultants, LLC will provide consulting and training on restorative approaches and practices, or RAP, in the school setting, and consulting on implementation of restorative approaches and practices in the Hartford Schools District. Madam Superintendent.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Stallings. I'll provide some context, and then I'll make a connection to our strategic goals and our priorities and why this work is so important. Consultation and training will continue to build the capacity and sustainability of the schools that have been in the first 3 cohorts, and it will add an additional cohort that will entail 6 new schools identified through not only application but also selection, where central office in collaboration with school-based leaders will determine need for schools to engage in this work. School teams receive intensive training in nonviolent communication, collaborative and proactive solutions, circle processes, mindfulness, and restorative justice. The process is that the teams develop a 3-year rollout plan that trains staff, parents, students, and ultimately transforms their entire community, school community, into a restorative community. The restorative approaches and the practices build relationships and create a culture that's based on shared community accountability, and the idea that everyone is responsible for the culture and what happens in it. I wanted to make several connections. One, to the alignment to our district priority around school culture and climate, and our goal of reducing chronic absenteeism, increasing students' perceptions of feeling safe and valued. And when we look at restorative approaches and practices, it's a way of building relationships and a way of bringing those that are impacted by harm, regardless of the harm, together with those who caused the harm, for the purpose of not only healing, shared accountability, but repairing the relationships and repairing the community. Also want to make a connection to our value and some of our beliefs. We know that as part of the district model of excellence, at the center of the district model of excellence is one value, right? We value the whole student. And we know that around that value, we have a certain number of beliefs that we believe that if enacted by every adult in this organization, we will be able to meet the needs of the whole child, the whole student. And so as it relates to this contract, we have a belief in the fact that our students, not only are they beautiful human beings, but they're capable human beings, and that they're filled with hopes and dreams, and that they have the capacity to achieve at high levels. And there's also the belief around inclusiveness, because we believe that in education, any learning community is better because of each and every one of its members. And so we want to seek to understand both the community and the ideas and the backgrounds and the interests and the views of every member in that community. And lastly, a connection around collaboration, the belief that there is power in working together.
in something that is greater. And so this includes students and adults and parents and partners. And so I wanted to highlight not only the center value that we have in the belief of the whole student, but those specific values because they align directly to this work of restorative practices and approaches. That is my initial overview.
Are there any questions?
And if there are questions,
Ms. Brody.
I'll ask Dr. Sellers and her team to come up and be available.
Ms. Brody.
I have questions around the cost, how the cost is broken out. First, I'll start with how was the schools chosen to be in the first cohort? Because I just immediately, when I immediately look at the schools, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. We have some schools that struggle more so than others in regards to behavior, right? So some schools have more funding. Our magnet schools just have more funding, so they can do a little more than our other schools. They are more resourced. So when I'm coming from that perspective and I look at how the cohort is broken out with which schools we're starting with, I want to match what I think with what you guys as the professionals think is a better approach, and where we're starting. As far as just the schools chosen in the first cohort, is it a reason why those schools were, like, what is the reasoning behind the choice?
Right. So thank you, Ms. Brady. We have Mr. Joe Brummer here. So this is work that has been recently moved into the Division of Student Support Services. So Mr. Brummer is here, and he can definitely speak to how those decisions were made when the project first started.
In addition to how the decisions will be made moving forward, because there is a distinction. So historical context will be helpful.
So we really thought holistically when we chose Cohort 1. We weren't thinking that we were just choosing Cohort 1. We're thinking long-term about the project.
Mm-hmm.
And so we wanted to choose schools we knew would be successful, because then we could build on those successes. So long-term, when we think about making change, we wanted to think, all right, we need successes here because we need to build on successes. So if we had chosen 5 schools, and those were 5 schools that were gonna not succeed at this, well, then we're doomed from the start. Mm-hmm. So we needed to pick schools that we knew would succeed. We still made them apply, so they had to fill out an application process. And what we looked for in that application process, how ready were they to make such a big change in their school? It's a big change to move away from punishment and punitive thinking to a more trauma-informed way. So we needed to know those schools were ready. And so we chose them based on their answers to the application about how much buy-in their staff already had. Because if we've got to go in and get buy-in from the whole staff right from the start, it's going to be a pretty big uphill battle. And so for the first cohort, especially the first cohort, we really wanted to get schools that would get the ball going. Mm-hmm. So that when we knew that cohorts would come after it, that we were building off successes. Like, people would want to become a cohort school because they saw the good stuff it's doing in these schools that succeeded. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't based as much on need as it was, can we succeed at this so we can build on success? I don't know if that answers your question.
It does.
Sure, and I would say that's definitely an approach you can take with any new project like this, is to, seek out places where you can build a model program in order to replicate.
Okay, because I have my list of schools. You desperately need to start hearing here, but okay.
And I think there's some comments even about how we move forward. Right. I think we always want to be thinking long term. Mm-hmm. So, and knowing nationally, how do they choose schools, in any district? And when you go to the conferences, you listen to the people that write the books on restorative justice and restorative practices in schools, I mean, there are some consultants and organizations doing the work that actually survey schools to see how ready they are for this. Because quite frankly, at the end of the day, it's a waste of your money to go into a school that is not ready to make this change. You will dump a lot of money and a lot of energy, and it will fail. And why do that? And so we really want to walk into a school knowing we can make a change at this school, but then we also know that'll build. And so schools that haven't come on board with us yet are going to look at the schools that are succeeding and see their suspensions are going down, their referrals are going down, the teachers are reporting that they're happier in their school. Well, then the rest of them are going to go, well, I want to do that. And so the idea is build up what we can succeed on. If we were to, and I don't disagree with you that there are always going to be schools in a district that need this more than others, but we can't, that's not the greatest, in this work, it's not the greatest telltale of who will succeed. And so those schools are going to come on board slowly, and we will bring them on board. I would not recommend you make that your deciding factor, because you will waste money.
Okay.
Ms. Oliver, and then Mrs. Clark.
Thank you. So the follow-up to that, and I guess the question is more so to the district, agreed on the readiness factor completely. So then what are we doing as a district to help those other schools get to a place of readiness? So I don't know if someone can answer that.
So I also wanted to get back to Shantae's question around how we are approaching the work moving forward. So since cohort 1, these types of approaches have become part of the routine, not just at these schools, but throughout other schools as well. So for example, the use of circles, right? That's become more of a universal approach to everything that we do, including, how we engage around a professional learning. And so we're not at the same readiness stage, I would say, that we were. Well, I wasn't here when cohort 1 began, however, we are at a very different place in the continuum in terms of starting. And I do believe now that we have other schools that perhaps initially would not have been considered to be ready, but we as central office are being very strategic around the supports that we provide from a leadership perspective and then from a support service perspective as well. And so I can't tell you that we're approaching it. I can tell you that we are not approaching it the way we approached it in cohort 1. Certainly there's going to be a process in which people apply and engage in some reflection. A leadership team comes together and really looks at the application and really looks at, what are the current factors in my school to make this be successful. But there's also a conversation around our central office leadership and identifying there are certain schools that need what we call tier 3, immediate supports. And so if we look at what they were missing in terms of a readiness factor, that's when we at central office then come in and try to augment that readiness factor so that they can jump into the work.
And if it helps at all, when we started with cohort 1 and those applications, we had like 6 applications. Cohort 2, we had, I think, 8 applications. By cohort 3, there were 11 applications. So it just keeps, so more school, and I know for cohort 4, I already know leadership at each school has gone to new schools, and so now those schools want to come on board. So I have a feeling when we put out the call for applications for cohort 4, there are lots of schools that want to apply that have already contacted me saying, how do we apply? And that's what we want. We want that rolling, we want it to factor, because that will help us grow this change. And it's kind of following John Cotter's model of change. I don't know if any of you know John Cotter's model of change, but that idea that you build on your successes, so you get that inertia going, so that as you move the change forward, people want the change. And so that readiness factor keeps going up.
Right, I would agree, and people can see a successful model, and that's part of what can get people to really sort of start to shift their belief system if this wasn't an approach that they were necessarily on board with. There are many people who still view sort of an old-fashioned approach to discipline as the best approach. So having these model programs really does provide that model for people to look at and kind of wonder about in terms of what's happening with that approach, how is it impacting the data at that school. Principals talk to principals, and it's very important for them to see that model program. I also wanted to say, so in terms of readiness, right, we have schools who are on board with our cohorts for restorative approaches and practices. we're still applying many of the beliefs that restorative approaches and practices cultivate. So through our trauma-informed work, we're still doing that work in addition at other schools, kind of, changing belief systems, changing mindsets. So if you'll note on the one pager, when we talk about different approaches to discipline, we have punishment, trauma, student behavior, social emotional learning. We're still turning those levers at every single school. So, we're definitely, I think some of our schools are at a better stage of readiness than they were when we first started the first cohort. And I see someone over here had a question. Ms. Glanville. Oh, I saw somebody over here. Okay.
You got, I do that. You do my job. Like,
well, I felt like I cut her off. That's why I said
Mrs. Clark and then Mrs. Glanville.
So I had just a couple questions. The first one, I see that it talks about like the 5 days of youth training, and then the training, I'm assuming with a teacher, or is it with the principal? Actually, let me get clarity on that one. Is those who will be training on the restorative justice, it's principals, principals, assistant principals, or are there actual teachers?
All of the above.
Okay.
Sorry. So at each school, for each of the cohort schools, so there's some money in this budget that we put aside for doing training with new teachers, training with district staff, but then for each of the each cohort school needs to form a cohort team, generally around 10 people. 5 of those people are going to come to 6 days worth of training. There has to be an administrator. Like that, it's a requirement of that team that there has to be, because nothing really changes in a building without the administrator on board. And so we need an administrator. It doesn't have to be the principal, although the one school that did send their principal, actually no, there's more than one. The cohort 3 sent some principals. And then cohort 1 had one principal, which is Sand School. And I think they had great successes. But there has to be an administrator. But then along with that, this has to be a bottom-up, top-down approach to implementation. So it can't feel like we're doing this to teachers. We want them to feel like it's being done with them. And so we want a team that reflects the school, teachers, guidance counselors, office staff, because they can be they're the front lines of kids getting sent to the office. So we want office staff on board. We want them trauma-informed, we want them equitable, and we want them to understand that restorative thinking. And so we need as many people in the building trained as possible, but that training's got to come through the team.
Okay. So with that training, and they're receiving this training, one of the biggest concerns, we look at teachers and we see how they are pushed with having to be the parent, the social worker, the teacher, all of that all at once. So with your success of doing this program, how have you felt that teachers, administrators, or whomever are a part of this cohort have been feeling with respect of kind of now having this added on responsibility? Because when you think of restorative justice, you're really thinking or changing the mindset of how you handle or deal with children. And just putting my social work hat on, that's a difficult approach to teach someone if they've never been taught in a classroom or years of being in a clinical experience. So I'm just wondering how do teachers or those who have participated in this program felt about that added pressure?
So one of the things that we did as we started this project, and this is really me, we've done this on a limited budget. We've done as much as we can without jeopardizing the integrity of the work. One thing we didn't have a lot of money to do was actually evaluate these trainings. And so I personally made that happen. I met up with a really wonderful PhD from Florida, who literally wrote the book, Creating Restorative Schools, which this is actually for the board to take and sort of share amongst you, sent to you by the author, Martha Brown. I met Martha. I paid her to evaluate the 6-day training. So there are 3 cohorts. We only were able to evaluate cohort 3. We pre and post tested them, and that's where we want to know what attitudes and beliefs are we changing, because restorative practices and trauma informed aren't something you do; they're something you become. And so, how do you measure that? And so we put together a pre and post survey to sort of measure attitudes and beliefs. And one of those, things that we're looking at is, do they feel that this is just another thing on their plate? And the answer is no. We're trying to make life easier for them. And when you implement trauma-informed, you implement restorative practices, we're actually making their classroom time easier. We're teaching them through the use of Ross Green's work and collaborative and practice solutions, how do we predict the kids that are going to give us the behavior problems, and then help work with those kids before the behavior comes. And so we're teaching them how to do respect agreements that are a way of sort of having the class itself become its own discipline system, its own community. And so we're taking stuff off their plate rather than putting it on their plate.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say that the people on the team, you know, they're getting put on an implementation team to do some additional implementation work in their school. They all volunteered for it. And some of them come to this work on day one of those 6 days, saying, well, what do I have to do? Oh, and I have to do what? By day 6, they're so enthusiastic to be there and want to do this. And so I think the vast majority of people that have gone through the training and are doing the work passionately want to be doing it.
Okay. And then I just have 2 more questions, and then I'll be done. The kids that you're taking out and you're doing this training, are they missing school for purposes of doing the training?
The students that we train as circle keepers are actually taken out of school for a day to become circle keepers and to learn about restorative justice. In one school, they've actually gotten multiple trainings, and that was not part of our contract last year, but this group of students was just so passionate about restorative practices and trauma-informed and equity that they just wanted more training, and how could I say no? I couldn't say no. And so they are missing school time, but they all know that. They all know they have to make up the work, and to my knowledge, they all did.
Okay. And then my last question is, with Hartford, we have a very culturally diverse group of students and teachers. So I'm just hoping, and you don't necessarily have to answer this question, but I hope that when we're teaching restorative justice practices, that we're thinking of the culture that we have in Hartford. It's very different than other districts. So I just want to, when we're talking about restorative justice and talking about ways to handle situations, if we have a student that gets up and starts screaming and we're trying to figure out exactly what's going on, and you're teaching teachers, okay, maybe they just had a bad day, just leave them alone, or because I do understand the restorative justice. So I just hope that we're really keeping in mind when we're teaching that Hartford is very unique of the culturally diverse students that we have and teachers.
All of this work is done through a trauma-informed, equitable lens. That's not to say that we haven't had some bumps in that. We have. And at the same time, a focus of this work is being equitable and trauma-informed. And so as we do this work, we know that on a national level, students of color, LGBT students, and students with disabilities are punished at higher rates. Mm-hmm. And so that's got to be part of the main conversation we have. Because at its heart, restorative justice is social justice. It's community justice. And so we can't do this work and not talk about racial justice, not talk about justice for LGBT students or kids with disabilities. And so that has to be the main lens at which we do this work from.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Glanville.
Thanks. I had a specific question about the schools as well. I didn't see JMA or High School Inc. And I asked because I was at, I participated in a Weaver Steering Committee workshop earlier this year, where we actually, we got a presentation of the work that Kinsella had been doing, and on this we did a circle time, and it was amazing. And the presentation was geared towards the co-location of those schools for next school year, starting with Kinsella and JMA and High School Inc. all going back into the new Weaver and wanting to have like a cohesive school climate around that. So I'm just curious if that has been considered. Because I was under the impression from that presentation with the Weaver Steering Committee that JMA and High School Inc. would then be coming on with this work for that reason, because of that timeline, and I'm wearing my facilities hat here because that is happening next school year. So that was a specific question I had about the schools, because I didn't see it on here.
So High School Inc. was part of Cohort Team.
Okay.
They did not do as well as we hoped they would do. there were some challenges for that school. I think they were going through some transitions, so it didn't work out for them. They had a really strong team. I want to give their team a lot of plugs. Our hope is in Cohort 4 that we're very much encouraging High School Inc. and the new Weaver Project and JMA to be part of Cohort 4. And our assumption is that they're going to apply and be part of it. I haven't talked to them, so I'm looking at June and saying,
So that will be after the schools come back together. The first year of it, they're all together in Weaver.
No,
Cohort 4.
We do it now.
Oh, this is now.
Yeah, the work
okay.
would start
so we don't,
now,
okay.
correct.
Okay, sorry. Oh, I don't have it.
Correct, and you can
Sorry,
see,
so I'm,
yeah, High School Inc. was originally in Cohort 2, and they did drop out, but they will be, so for Cohort 4, they'll be coming back into the restorative practice circle.
But I do want to
I was looking at the wrong thing.
make the connection earlier to Ms. Oliver's point. We have to think about readiness, right? And we know that there's going to be leadership transition ultimately, right? And so we at the district level have to think through how we are going to compensate for those readiness factors this year. So I just want us to be realistic and acknowledge the fact that yes, there is urgency there. And we all agree that there is a need to start to maximize the time early on, but at the same time, we have to think about what does this look like year 2 when leadership, right, looks different at our new Weaver.
In terms of continuity, right?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So it's just for us internally and in working with you, of course, Joe,
Totally agree.
to think through.
That's the conversation too about need versus readiness. Like, just because they really need it doesn't mean they'll succeed at it. And that's hard. Literally, I find that heartbreaking because they're the schools that really need it are the ones I want to be in. But if it's not going to work, it's not going to work.
So we engage in differentiate. So how do we differentiate around it so that the experience can be leveraged?
Right.
Yeah.
have we, and this is really, I guess, then more of a follow-up question for you, have we contemplated that in terms of co-locations, in terms of trying to leverage in these co-locations strategy that we have in the District Model of Excellence, leverage that with the schools that are co-located, even if like they're separate schools and one has done it and the other hasn't?
So that requires more of a system level strategy. We know that 2 schools, for example, that are going to co-locate have been part of a cohort and understand the work and have bought in, but it's just now building community around 2 schools that are going to come together. And so it might entail that they do some of these processes and learnings again, perhaps not to the deep degree that they did it the first time around, but there is going to be new learning because there are 2 new communities coming together.
And we've already, and I don't know if we're talking about the same schools, but there are schools that are cohort schools that are now co-locating, and there's already been conversations with those schools and those teams about how, and the cohorts themselves about how they could work together, how they can use this to sort of feed each other and support the work. We have one of the things we're encouraging all cohort schools to do is work together, share resources, visit each other's schools. The idea of the cohorts is it's almost peer pressure. Nobody wants to be the one that comes to the cohort meeting and says, yeah, we didn't get anywhere. So it's almost a little peer pressure. So we have sort of, baton system feeds pathways, both cohort schools. The staff of those schools have circled up together to talk about how they're going to make restorative practices work between the 2 schools. The same is true of MLK, Breakthrough, both of the breakthroughs. I mean, those conversations between the schools, we want that, we encourage that, because that's what's going to make these transitions better. We also, you'll see in this budget that there's a space in there to do a restorative justice advisory council. So we can take members of all the cohorts, let them answer these questions, so that it's, again, bottom up. It's teachers and staff making decisions about what restorative practices looks like in Hartford, made by the people who will be affected by these decisions. And so that's why we want that advisory council really answering those questions for us, because they're the ones that they're the ones impacted.
Thanks.
I have a last question.
Mrs. Brody.
So and I was trying to read quickly, when are we explaining and sharing this with parents so they know what this is?
Great question.
Because it's some stuff I'm sure that we could use at home.
So there's two parts to that question. The first part of it is school by school. That's part of their 3-year rollout. Again, every school is different. Their parent, sometimes they have a PTO, sometimes they don't have a PTO, sometimes they have great engagement with their parents, sometimes they don't. Every school creates their 3-year plan because they know their parents. They know their resources, their roadblocks. They'll determine within those 3 years, when do we bring the parents on board? Now, with that said, every team should have a parent on the team. Like, we want parent engagement. Some schools have brought parents on like right from the start, like Betances Early Reading Lab. We've already done 2 sort of things with parents. We've circled parents up. We've done similar things at other schools. District-wise, so the second part of that is, when do we do this with the district? Like, when does the district say, bring in the parents to restorative practices? Again, I would go back to that Restorative Justice Advisory Council made up of all of the cohort teams and let them share out, like, here's how it's working at my school. Here's how it didn't work at my school. Here's what we as a district need to know about engaging parents in restorative practices. And let that team, like, there's no consultant on the planet that should tell teams how to do that. They need to do that themselves. And so I would love to engage parents 2 years ago. I think it should happen right from the start, doing movie night, book clubs, info sessions, circle sessions. There are so many ways to engage parents. And I always want to defer back to the schools themselves to let them tell us in their plan when's the best time. And so to bring it on that slow, like, don't push it on people, let it grow, let it build itself naturally, or organically, if that's really the word. But I think that Restorative Justice Advisory Council, when we get that together, they're the best people to answer that question.
Okay, so from the district, who's going to be, of course, because we can't pay you forever for support. So who's going to be our people that once, when we're no longer consulted, how are we continuing this with fidelity? So who's going to own that as from the district? That would be my concern.
So I can answer. So we do have district leads for that work. We have our director, Joanne Tremblay Jackson, myself. We have our directors of student engagement and behavior support who will be coming on board. I may have mentioned this before, but we're utilizing our school psychologists, our social workers as more of an integrated team. So this work is, spread out across the district rather than being focused maybe on one person who's leading, this initiative or this project. So, and like I said, there's also all of these other levers that we're continuing to turn with our trauma-informed approach, creating trauma-informed spaces in schools. We have specific programs in many of our schools that have adopted restorative approaches and practices. They may not, I think MD Fox is in the cohort, but in our RISE programs, which are our programs for our students with emotional disorder. So we do have a team who will be implementing this work and carrying this work on.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
So my school started restorative justice last year, and we were one of the schools that Joe was talking about how we kept asking him to come back, because after our first training, we just really, okay, you're just amazing, but our school, like our group was made of people that, yeah, you knew their names, but you never really had a full-on conversation with them. And it was a pretty big group, maybe 25, 30, I don't know. It was pretty big. And it's made up of athletes. It's made up of students who take AP classes, students who just take regular classes, students who stay after school and do clubs, students who, do clubs outside of school, students who dance. It's like a whole diverse group of students met in this group. And at first we were like, oh, we're not really sure how we're going to react to this. But we said, okay, let's do it. And after maybe, it was a full day, so maybe after 12, we actually really started to like it because we learned to open up with each other, and we actually became close friends just from that first experience. And it was amazing to see how students can come together after just one day of being with each other. And so that's when we kept asking our teacher, like our advisor, if we can keep having these discussions and meetings because we love them. And yeah, we were missing school, but it was something that we were willing to compromise and, get our work from our teachers because this was very important to us. And it made students feel like they were doing something good and a part of something. And it also helped our school to allow teachers and students to work together collaboratively, where us as student leaders got to meet with the teachers at staff meetings, and we did circles with them, and we really got to discuss their concerns and our concerns based on how we wanted to start restorative justice at our school. And then we also have these trim prep times at our schools now, and as student leaders we work with the teachers and we do circles on anxiety or divorced parents or parents who are in prison, stress, those kinds of big topics that we don't really get to discuss at school. And so we allow kids, either middle schoolers or high schoolers, depending on the group that we pick, to come in this circle, and they all share that same common idea, whether it's anxiety. And they talk about it, and they feel comfortable with each other because they say, oh, look, there's a student leader here who feels the same way as I do and has that same experience, and they're willing to talk. And if you keep meeting with them over time, it really helps them build their confidence and overcome things. And I know my friend, she has anxiety, and she worked with some of these middle school students, and she said at first they were really quiet, but over time they really believed in her and they trusted her and they talked about it and they worked things out. So I would say restorative justice is very important, and I think you guys should consider it.
Thank you for sharing that, Alexa.
I have tons of questions, and I'll probably keep you here for hours. And I'm not as optimistic as my colleagues at all. And I say that for this reason, and I'll just piggyback on a few points that were made tonight. The process that Alexa just described to me, in my mind, is what school should be anyway. And that is a give and take, an exchange between the teacher and the student, in a collaborative process. Because for me, again, education is something that you bring out of the student, not put in. And so, thinking of that, you're talking about restorative justice, which is social justice. And we all know that pretty much the school system doesn't make a difference. Public school system pretty much founded on institutional racism. So there's a cornerstone of bias, and implicit bias, that we have to eliminate or eradicate in order to really have a restorative environment. And so what I'm hearing is you're first addressing teachers and getting them to, if they're not confronting their bias, then how can they be restorative in their approach? And if they are approaching their bias, that is not deep enough. Because again, what we're trying to do is get to an exchange, which is basically parent and teacher. It's not really the student teacher, it's parent teacher. If mom is your first teacher, and if you are socialized by mother, and you are a part of her social construct, if there is a breakdown between the parent and the teacher, and let's just talk about what Ms. Clark was saying, there are some cultural divides or some subcultural issues that sort of promote these inherent biases. So if we are not communicating correctly, if we're miscommunicating, how can we have a restorative approach is one. And two, the schools that you're not in are the schools that we really need this work. And so I question, if we're establishing this in schools that pretty much all have a some semblance of a social construct already, and they're either high functioning or they have delegated leaders, or they're somewhat new magnet schools. Therefore, they pretty much had some of their school community or kind of piecemeal and put together for them. How do we truly understand if this is effective and it works? So, for example, if you have at a JMA where you have kids that are just at each other's throat because they miscommunicate or they just are used to improper relationships, and that spills out into the community. So now we have these kind of antics or these kind of behavior in the community, and so now the community is experiencing trauma because we're miscommunicating and we are not communicating with each other effectively. That is the core issue for teachers. Teachers are disciplining because they're spending more of their time dealing with social ills that come from home or come from the community. And if students are not ready to come to school to learn because they're carrying that trauma or that emotional stress with them to school, how is this approach dealing with that? Because again, if I'm not relating to myself well, I can't relate to you well. If I misunderstand, and I've asked people the hoodie question, but I'm actually literally throwing it at you right now. If I'm wearing a hoodie and that's my identity and that's how I feel confident about me and who I am, and you as a teacher feel that it's a danger and it's a safety issue, how do we have a restorative conversation on my insecurities, my subculture, and how do you inspire a student to want to take off that hoodie and be a student?
Oh, so you had a bunch of stuff.
I know.
So let's go back a few steps. And so the first.
You don't have to
thing
answer them all.
I'll try and do as much as I can, as concisely as I can. One, equity is built into this. We can't have this conversation if we're not talking about justice, both racial justice, justice for LGBT kids, and justice for kids with disability. It's built into the work. We have to have those conversations. But we also have to back those conversations up with actual skills. And so everyone that comes through this learns what we call the 5 skills of restorative practices. And the 5 skills include those communication skills. But then we're also teaching teachers and administrators how to have problem-solving conversations with students. We spend a lot of time on the communication of what restorative dialogue looks like. That's why nonviolent communication is part of this, so that those conversations can happen. It's also why we're teaching people Ross Green's work around collaborative and proactive solutions, which is a 3-step problem-solving method. So we have to have the hoodie conversation, which I literally work in 5 districts in 4 states, and I have the hoodie conversation in every school. I don't know why. I wish somebody would solve the hoodie thing really quickly. But that conversation comes up. How do we teach teachers to have that conversation? How do we teach administrators how to have that conversation? Well, that's why there's 6 days of training. We need that to happen. But we need the rest of that school to get those skills as well. We need students to get those skills. And so when we brought the students together, we taught them communication skills, empathy skills, mindfulness. All of that comes to, like, it's a wraparound. What many schools are doing in districts across the country who are doing restorative practices, they're doing just restorative practices. Hartford's not. Hartford is doing this sort of integrated model that is really only being done in Connecticut, and it's only being done in the schools that work with me. And that hybrid integrated model is mindfulness, nonviolent communication, restorative justice principles, trauma-informed work, and equity. There are no other districts, unless you are consulting with me, you're not doing this. And it's part of my own belief system that when we walk into a school, we need adults that can be regulated, that can be mindful, so that when that student loses their cool and throws into a tornado, we don't jump in with them. And so that's our first part of this. And then sort of the second part of your sort of question, which hopefully I'll capture well, is sort of like the schools where we really need this. Will it work in those schools? Yes, of course it will. We have to just get to those schools. We could be in all your schools. We don't have the resources for that. And I wouldn't encourage it anyway. I think the school districts where they did these big, massive jumps to get as many schools and as many people trained as they could literally blew through hundreds of thousands of dollars and have nothing to show for it. And so faster and more is not always better. I think, what's that old saying? You can do it fast, you can do it right, kind of thing. I think we could be doing more schools. We could be in these schools that really need us. We're limited on resources. We're limited on resources to evaluate the work that we really want to. And I think, the sentence I keep going back to, which I borrowed from my own husband, was, we're doing this work with the limited resources we have without compromising the integrity of the work. So yes, I would love to see us in schools that really need us. And we have to be as thoughtful as we can about using these resources as wisely as we can to make sure we never bridge that integrity. So that the racial justice piece, the justice for LGBT kids, the kids with disabilities, all those pieces are there. Or we're not really doing restorative justice. We're doing it in name only. And trust me, there are districts all across the country who are doing this in name only. And it shows, quite frankly, because it shows in their data.
So if I were to request suspension and discipline data for some of these schools, we're going to see a reduction in that, and if I walk through, I'm going to see restorative environment. Is that what you're saying to me?
I think you will see it in some of these schools. I think some other schools are not there yet. I think we had schools that came on board as a cohort and just never took off the ground. Definitely look at this one pager. We definitely have schools that have made drastic reductions in suspensions and referrals. We also have some schools, and it's not uncommon within the first and second year of implementation of restorative practices that you might see a bump up as students sort of go, what's this? That's not uncommon, but then it should drop back down. Our deal is, I don't know that we're doing the evaluation that we'd like to be doing. I think we're doing what we can do. It may not be what we want to do.
We are adding more questions to the Panorama survey that we do to add more questions in regards to how students feel connected to school, how safe they feel in school, how secure they feel in school. And so that's part of what we're discussing with Panorama, so we can add that and increase our survey's impact towards driving this work and seeing where it takes us. And part of what we've done last year as well is trauma-informed work for all of our administrators, and we did that through all the admin PDs from September through December, and to, again, increase the knowledge base of all of our administrators. And then they started, like Joe was saying, talking to each other about restorative practices and wanting more in their school, realizing the need and the impact that it was having, the positive impact it was having. Particularly in several schools where they saw amazing results. One of them is McDonough, which is a middle school. And we all know how middle schoolers are, and that tends to be a more difficult population. And it's been quite successful at McDonough, and the teachers feel more safe, and the students say they feel more safe, and they feel connected, and they're helping each other. They see it as a positive atmosphere. We're also doing more CPI training this year, and part of CPI is also learning how to recognize behaviors, how to de-escalate behaviors, and how to keep behaviors from an adult's behaviors from increasing a child's behaviors. And so that's really the focus in each team, each school, and this is across the entire district. Crisis teams are all being CPI trained this year by the end of the year. And slowly but surely, because we can't empty any school. And the crisis teams that respond to mental health crises and health crises, the everyday crises that occur in schools.
All right, so last question. So we have teachers that are getting professional development and guided reading. We have teachers that are being professional development and many other initiatives in the within the district. So we have professional development all over the place. So this is another professional development that you're adding on to teachers. And so, one, I guess, when is the plate too full that if you're throwing all this professional development at teachers, how can they effectively implement this and be successful at all of these different initiatives all at once. And then two, again, when we're talking restorative, I see, I think of being identified, making something whole again, restoring justice to an environment. And again, if I feel that this environment is not just for me to begin with, or I feel that it's not welcoming me to begin with, I need to understand, because we're talking two different things. We're talking socially and we're talking academically. So how is a restorative practice going to make a better student? I mean, and again, I think it could. I'm not saying that it cannot. But which one are you doing first? Are you trying to create an environment for conducive learning, or are you trying to address the ills that are coming in the classroom? How do you start this? And then the last thing is, how do you implement something like this in the school without talking to parents at all?
All right, so there are three big things in there. So
All so
let's start with one.
Nope, answer the last one.
Answer the last one? How do we do
how do you do this without having full engagement of parents?
I think parents have to be fully engaged. It's when do you bring them on board? Because if the staff is not really understanding what they're doing, and then parents are expecting them to all be restorative when they're... So let me back up. New Haven did that. New Haven had their parents on board right from the beginning, and it backfired on them. So did many other districts. You have to bring parents into this project when the school's like at the right point for it. And so every one of these schools has to come up with their 3-year plan. In that 3-year plan, they have to determine how to engage their parents. They'll know, that team knows when to do it. They know whether to do it early, or they need to go, nah, we need more buy-in first. We need to get more things in place first. It's up to every individual school to make that determination of what's best for their community. They know, maybe they engage some of their parents, not all of their parents. Maybe they partner with their PTO. That school knows how to create community in their school. And it has to be done school by school. No two schools can do that the same way, because they're different communities. And so we need to engage those parents. I can't tell you when to engage parents. That team should tell you when to engage parents. That Restorative Justice Advisory Council that we want to put in place, those are the people that have those answers. Because again, it's got to come from the bottom up. It's got to be organic.
I would also add, there's a lot of reasons why parents might be not fully engaged in the process. And we can't pause, as people who are in public education and believe in civil rights and social justice, we can't pause any of these things while we're waiting for a parent to become engaged. So we have children arriving to our schools every day. That's our professional responsibility, is to put structures, practices in place to make sure that that child learns. And we'll absolutely continue the work of trying to engage parents and support parents and reaching out to them in the community. But I would say that would be my answer to, we wouldn't want to pause any of these initiatives because we don't have full parent engagement.
And some schools, like you go to Betances STEM and the Betances Early Reading Lab, they engage parents right from the beginning. We've circled up with parents. We've done trainings on the 5 skills. We've brought these practices to the parents already, which the parents loved. It was probably, I was told it was one of their better parent engagement nights when we did the circle with parents. There are other schools that have actually had Circle Day, and they ran circles in individual classrooms and just invited parents to the circles. So there are schools that are engaging parents right from the start.
And it is a part of the 3-year plan.
And it is it's always part of the 3-year parent engagement. And every team should have a parent on it. Right from the start, they're supposed to have a parent on there. So it's not like we're leaving parents in the dust in any way, shape, or form. We need parents on board.
And I'm going to say this in regards to whether we're doing one or the other. We're doing both. Yeah. Because I have to feel safe. I have to feel wanted. I have to feel attended to in order to learn. If I come to school and all my basic needs need to be met, which is why we have food for our students, all right, which is why we pay attention when, something's going awry and their needs are not being met, so that we can try and address those needs. That's why we have social work there. That's why we have family resource aides there. That's why the teachers call us in and let us know that they have concerns. That's why we do whole classroom reviews to see, how we can connect the students to other resources and things that they may need, and the parents as well, to enhance this child's sense of wholeness. Because you're not going to learn if you're over anxious and if you're not feeling comfortable and attended to. Or if you're hungry, or if you're overtired and haven't slept the night before, So we have all kinds of kids that come in with all kinds of things that happened, and we try and take care of all of their needs, and so that they all can learn as best as they can. And the restorative approaches helps them feel safe with each other and with the adults around them, because there's a lot of little things that happen day to day that make somebody feel like, what? All right, and the restorative practices keep that from escalating into a major event. And instead, we talk about how this didn't go so well, and it could have gone awry, but instead, like, how do we make this right?
So last thing I'll say is this. In a rhetorical sense, I'll ask you, and you don't have to answer it now, what is trauma? Because that can mean many different
That's
things.
not even rhetorical. I can answer that question, like right from the books. I can answer that question.
And the other part is, the reason why I'm asking the question is because, to your point, the what? I'll use myself as an example. That kept me alive.
That's right.
So you're asking me to forfeit an action that would actually keep me alive more times than not.
No, we're not.
I'm going to spend more. No. But you are, because I can't sit in a circle in the street. I can't. And the reasoning in my community in the street is different from the reasoning in the school community. So I need to understand, and I need to gain the skills to navigate both.
Correct.
And so that's what I'm trying to get at. And so again, I'm not going to sit here and drill you on that, because I spent way too much time on this. But that's what I'm trying to understand and trying to get at.
So, two things I want to point out to you, just right from the start. We are not doing restorative justice as a sole restorative justice. We are doing trauma-informed restorative justice. Everything we are doing is coming from a trauma-informed lens to create trauma-informed schools. Anybody that comes to a 6-day training with me is going to spend 2 intensive days on trauma, both historical trauma, acute trauma, intergenerational trauma, the trauma that comes from racism and homophobia and all the isms. Like, we are going to focus on creating trauma-informed schools so that kids that come into school can feel comfortable, let down their guard, and if that's the only refuge they've got in Circle, well, then let's give it to them. Let's make a school where these kids can come and learn, because kids whose stress systems of fight or flight are engaged can't learn. And so we need teachers to be able to recognize and refer. We need them to be able to create safe classrooms where kids who are triggered, teachers know how to de-escalate that, bring it back down without exploding into something else. We need to make sure that an entire school knows how to recognize coping skills. In other words, chewing gum can be a coping skill. Earbuds can be a coping skill. Earbuds
A hoodie could be a coping skill.
What's that?
Exactly.
I didn't hear that one, but yes.
A hoodie could be a coping
Oh, hoodies are absolutely. A hoodie can make you feel safe. We need teachers to recognize what are coping skills. And so we literally hand them, handouts that say, here's all the things that look like fight, flight, or freeze. And quite frankly, a hoodie is flight. So are the earbuds. Talking back to your teacher, that's fight. Hiding under the desk, that could be part of freeze. Like, we want teachers to be able to recognize, what does trauma look like in this classroom and how do I respond? That's what we're doing with this trauma-informed restorative practices. That's why this isn't what other schools are doing. We're doing this a lot different. I personally think Hartford's gonna, knowing what other districts are doing across the country, knowing that most of my colleagues are people doing this across the country, no one's doing what we're doing. Like, if Hartford continues on this path and really succeeds at this, puts its heart into it, you will be on the map in the world of restorative justice, because nobody's going this far Nobody's being this well thought out. And nobody is adding trauma and equity this heavily. No one's doing this. San Francisco didn't do it. Denver actually did it. Minnesota did it. Minnesota did it because they have such a high population of Native Americans. And so that was pushed to be done with equity. Everybody else, they're doing circles. We're not doing circles. We're doing a whole bunch of stuff. And we're the only ones that I know of across the country that have added Ross Green's work around collaborative and proactive solutions, which I think is absolutely essential, because we need teachers to have problem-solving skills with students. And so I know it sounds like, wow, this is a lot to buy into, especially for kids that are marginalized. I'm not going to say this is the answer to all of those things. There needs to be multiple answers coming from top down, bottom up, side to side. There needs to be equity training. There needs to be trauma training. There's no one road to get where we want to go. The real system, you're right. These schools and most of our systems in this country were built on white supremacy. I'm sorry, you have a $68,000 contract here. I can't fix that. But here's what I can do. I can go in and make sure teachers are trauma informed. I can go in and I can make sure that we're responding thoughtfully and mindfully to when kids do mess up. And that we see that not as kids getting in trouble, but kids being in struggle. That's the term I always use. And so, can I solve all these other problems? No, I'm sorry, you don't have the money for that. But we'll do the best we can with the resources we have without jeopardizing the integrity of the work.
I could solve it, but I just have to stay in my lane, that's all. But okay, thank you.
That's okay. I did actually, so this is not from me. This is for you, the chairman, from Martha herself, who dropped this in the mail and sent it to me to deliver to you. I also am going to invite anyone on that panel up there, including our superintendent, come to training. Come to 2 days of this training. Look what 1 day of this training did for students. Come to the training. We want you there. It's a top-down, bottom-up approach. You are the top. I need you trained too. Come hang out with us. We want you there.
If I may just add one quick thing. While you're doing the reconstruction of the surveys, make sure, again, I'm sorry, just always culturally competent when you're asking those questions. Are you afraid in school? Most kids who have behavioral issues are not afraid in school. They are the ones who are the perpetrators of that. So just make sure that you're culturally competent when you're asking those questions. And then secondly, community. We're going with our new model, all schools, community schools, make sure we're pushing that the community, so when they're making their 3-year plan, just make sure that we're involving those across the community also. So that's just my 2 little pointers for that.
Okay, so with that said, any more discussion? Ms. Oliver?
Chairman, I have a request. I think this has been a great discussion. I wish that we had more opportunities for these type of discussions. I think what would be helpful for me, if the leadership can consider it, is we've been looking at our strategic priorities, and we always start with teaching and learning first, which is obviously the core work. And then we get bogged down into teaching and learning, and then we try to do in 5 minutes this part. And I think my aha moment was, wow, I wish we could have spent 2 hours or had one workshop that was just talking about this stuff in the portfolio of the work. I'm a huge supporter of restorative practices. I'm privileged to professionally be in that space, to be able to support that and be aware of it. So I would love for us to have a much more robust conversation. So if we could figure that out, if you guys could consider that, I appreciate it.
We'll work on it. I agree. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right. Hearing none. Ms. Mendez, if you can get our voting thing situated as I read the motion. Before us, we have a motion to authorize the superintendent to execute a contract with Joe Bremer Consulting, LLC, for the term delineated in the contract ending June 30th, 2019, at a cost not exceeding $68,000. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? I tried to give you a heads up. Sorry. Well, you can always do it for us. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. All right. Keep going, yeah.
It takes.
We'll vote.
Oh, now it is.
Yep. I can't vote. Oh, wait, you know what? I'm gonna pop up, that's why. Okay, sorry. All right. So moving on to the consent agenda, item 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4. Is there a motion to consolidate all three items into one motion?
So moved.
Is it moved? Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and second. Is there a motion to pass? Oh, no, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor of combining items 5.2, 5.3, and 5.4 is one item, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carries. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
It's moved, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried, ayes have it. Tiffany, I did it. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor for a motion to adjourn the meeting, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's carried. We stand in adjournment after we vote.